Hello, welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Scott Mayo. We got Sports 25 to life. And looking at the top here, it's not too bad considering for a Monday, but it's still a really short slate, only 7 games. So, I mean, the big question or conundrum for everyone today is Chris Sale versus Johnny Cueto. Sale's $1,700 more on DraftKings, only $700 more on FanDuel. Obviously, significantly higher strikeout rate at 32.1% to 22.6 this year. Both guys similar as far as ground balls, fly balls, and walks. I mean, nearly identical in all of them. Pretty similar in home runs per 9 as well. You get Johnny Cueto facing a Detroit team that's obviously missing Miguel Cabrera. Yoenis Cespedes traded out of town, so not quite the offense that it once was. And you get Chris Sale against Mike Trout, Albert Pujols, and the rest of the Angels. So, with this one, both 7-run totals. Obviously, Cueto, much higher favorite, minus 208 because he's facing Matt Boyd as opposed to Matt Shoemaker for Chris Sale. So this is a tough decision. I tend to lean Sale slightly. I think it's an easier call on FanDuel where they're so similarly priced. But on DraftKings where it makes a significant difference, I don't mind going down to Cueto.
Yeah, I'm a little upset you didn't have a creative nickname for the rest of the Angels. I thought you were setting yourself up for something really good there.
I'll work on one for next time.
All right.
I mean, most of those words I would use to describe them, I'm not allowed to actually say while we're recording. So if it was a righty, Cole Calhoun would get a shout out, but it's not.
Yeah, I basically completely agree with you on that. I think on FanDuel, I'm going to go Sale as much as I possibly can. DraftKings' $1,700 difference is at least worth considering, like you mentioned. For Cueto's a bigger favorite. I mean, it's really just that. He's a bigger favorite. The price is quite a bit lower on DraftKings. I think you can make a case for both of them. I slightly prefer Sale on both sites just because, I mean, the Angels' offense I still don't think is as good as Detroit's, despite them having probably the best 2 players out of all 18 that are going to be in the lineup today or whatever. But like we've just been talking about, the rest of the Angels' offense isn't scary at all. Sale's good enough to get through the Pujols-Trout combination. If he's on that day. Obviously, he's been struggling a little bit lately, but I still think he's one of, if not the best pitcher in the major leagues. So he's going to retain my confidence, just like we were doing with Kershaw early in the season. Yep. I think Sale's going to be just fine. I think if you can get both of them in a DraftKings lineup, I think that's going to be an interesting way to go today because I don't think a lot of people are going to do that. It's tough today with how some of the hitters look to really do that. So I think it's definitely going to be an under-owned duo. Out of the rest of these guys, my personal favorite third option, I guess you would call him, is John Neese against the Rockies. He's only $6,800 on DraftKings. He's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel. And with one pitcher, I mean, like I mentioned, I'm going to try and go Sale as much as I possibly can. But Neese is a really interesting option today. Colorado struggled quite a bit against lefties. He's a minus 185 favorite, 7.5 over-under. He's been pretty, really good lately. Not blow you away great, but really consistently good. And the Rockies just struggle in general against lefties. They have too many lefties in their lineup right now. Obviously, some of them can hit left-handed pitching pretty decently, but I still prefer running a lefty out there against them than a righty for the most part because most of their top hitters, Gonzalez, Blackman, all left-handed. So I really like that price on Neese, especially on DraftKings at $6,800 as a starting pitcher too.
Yeah, I'm really with you there. I think he's the best guy in between, and he's fine tournament option there as well. I think in on FanDuel specifically, where he's just the one pitcher site. But like you mentioned, they're terrible against lefties, terrible on the road. Carlos Gonzalez is really the one bat. I mean, Arenado, of course, but Cargo's the one hot hitter right now, and he can't hit lefties to save his life. So
yeah, and Arenado has been better against righties all season anyway. Yeah. I mean, it's been great for his overall numbers because they face a lot more righties, but he hasn't been, even a plus split against lefties this season. He's been much better against righties, where I don't know if that's really telling. I'm sure he can still hit lefties as well or better than righties, but he's just been much better against righties this season. So there's nobody really scaring me away from using a lefty against them in that lineup, which used to kind of be the case when they had Tulo and Arenado back-to-back and a couple other righties over the past couple of years. But with a lot of their strong hitters being left-handed, I feel pretty good about Neese today. Who are you looking at after that?
There's a couple other guys I'm considering. I mean, the White Sox have been hot, but top to bottom, that's still not a very good offense.
Yep.
And Matt Shoemaker's finally looking like the Matt Shoemaker of last year that was, I won't say dominant, but, missing a ton of bats. He's got 27 strikeouts over his last 3 starts in 19 innings. And I mean, teams that Cleveland and Minnesota, neither one of those teams strike out a ton. I mean, neither team great at putting the ball in play. Coincidentally, Houston, the team they strike out the least of those three, and that's the team that we know strikes out a ton. So I think that he's an interesting option, more so because he's opposed by Chris Sale, of course, and that's going to drop ownership on anybody when you're facing an elite pitcher. But, this is a White Sox lineup outside of Jose Abreu, who obviously is locked in right now, that really not a single player is really out there. I mean, Melky Cabrera had that stretch there for a little while, but, he's been about okay over the past 2 weeks. Hasn't had a multi-hit game in his last 6. So I'm still targeting the White Sox, and I think Matt Shoemaker's a good upside option, but he doesn't come without risk pitching at U.S. Cellular with those home run struggles, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he's one of the better GPP options just because it's going to be a crazy low ownership percentage. There's definitely some upside there against a team that over the course of the season hasn't scored a ton of runs.
Yep.
Another guy that kind of fits into that same mold, a little bit cheaper for me, is Wei and Chen. Facing a Seattle team where a lot of their best hitters are left-handed. Both Seager and Cano have cooled off quite a bit over the last couple games. They haven't been nearly as good against lefties. I feel pretty good about him in general. Like, I'm not ecstatic to play him at the prices that he's at on both FanDuel and DraftKings. He's a little bit too expensive for me to really like, but I think he's a great GPP play. Like most of these games today, there's only one game that has above a 7.5 over-under, so you can feel pretty good about most of these pitchers at their prices in terms of just being able to get people out and get through 6 innings with a decent runs given up. He's a minus 124 favorite right now, 7,700 on DraftKings. I feel a little bit better about as a starting pitcher too. Obviously, he's got to navigate around Nelson Cruz in the middle of that lineup, and it's not like their lineup's bad. They've been hitting better lately, but the fact that he's left-handed and facing what should be a decent amount of lefties still in the Mariners lineup, I feel pretty good about him.
Yeah, and especially I think on FanDuel where, outfield, it's really not hard to get anybody that you want with some cheap pricing. So Nelson Cruz, of course, against any lefty is going to be a really popular play, especially on a 7-game slate. So I think that's going to depress his ownership even more. So that'll give Chen, lower ownership, because anyone who plays Cruz obviously is going to be playing Chen. And if Cruz is on 60% of lineups in GPPs, none of those people are going to be touching him. So, and Chen actually has really good numbers against this Mariners team.
Yeah.
It's like 15 for 101. They're batting 149 off him. So, yeah, Trumbo hits lefties well too, but he's not a consistent hitter. So I think just because of the Nelson Cruz factor on a short slate that he's going to be really low owned. And I'm with you there. I think he's a fine option. You're not expecting him to get 10 Ks and go 8 innings, but it gives you a quality start, gets you 5-6 strikeouts. There's not going to be a whole lot of pitchers that even have that kind of production tonight, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it, too. There's just not a ton of other guys I'm really that excited about. He's right up there with Shoemaker for me as 4 and 5 options. Outside of that, there's no one that I'm super excited about. The Dodgers can stack their lineup with righties against Gio Gonzalez. That doesn't excite me a ton. Ian Kennedy's been okay lately, but, he's facing a Cincinnati team that definitely has some power. He's a pretty decent favorite, though. I guess he would probably be my next guy on the list if I had to go deeper than the 5 guys we've talked about here.
Yeah.
His price isn't great. Nothing about him is really great except he's a pretty decent favorite and he's been pitching pretty decent lately. He's a guy that's most likely going to give you a quality start, but if he's not really worth that price to me, and there's not a ton of upside. Like, obviously he could go out and throw a really nice game, but the majority of the time you're not getting the upside that you really want from a guy in the 8,000 price range.
Yeah, and especially if you want a guy like that, you want a guy that really doesn't have a glaring weakness, maybe a guy that's not particularly great at anything. But, this is a guy with almost 2 home runs per 9 allowed. And he's getting crushed at home at Petco. 376 WOBA allowed and 14 home runs already. So, he doesn't come without risk. But I think, for me, it's tough to say that a lot of guys are secondary cash options on a slate like this. But a short slate, of course, is in play for GPPs. But I certainly don't expect him to go 18 FanDuel points or 30 DraftKings points, even on his best night in this situation. So
yeah, exactly. Even a guy like Ruby De La Rosa, who hasn't really been as good as Kennedy, I think I like a little bit more, honestly. He's just shown off upside a little bit more often when he's actually pitching really well. We saw him go 8 innings with 7 strikeouts and a win against Milwaukee a couple games ago. He could do something like that against Philly tonight. Obviously, Philly's been much better since they started going with some of these younger guys. Dominic Brown's been hitting. Maikel Franco's been hitting. But 7,500 for De La Rosa against them as a minus 150 favorite is a play I feel much, much better about.
Yeah, and I tend to agree there. I mean, obviously, like most of these young, cheaper pitchers, they don't come without risk because De La Rosa is dominant against righties, but really struggles against lefties. And there's a lot of lefties in that lineup, not a lot of consistently good lefties. But I think, especially because you look at all the Vegas lines today, every other game is either 7 or 7.5. The Philly Arizona game is 8.5. So that in and of itself, I think, will keep the ownership level low on him. And I'm not playing Aaron Harang to be contrarian because he's just not any good. But De La Rosa certainly has upside. I mean, he misses a lot of bats. And if he can navigate the lefties, but he's probably going to see about 6 of them tonight. You know, if he can navigate those guys,
Right.
highest total of the day is going to keep him really low owned. So I think that he's a really good option for that reason. Because I think a lot of people stack Philly just because that's been the sexy pick recently. And they have been hitting well. But, you know, he definitely has the stuff to shut down a lot of these young hitters in that lineup.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only other guy I would really even look at on this slate, I mean, is a super cheap guy, David Holmberg for Cincinnati. He's been okay over his first 2 starts. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs allowed in the first one, 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs allowed in the second one. He's not going to go out and strike very many guys out. He's got 7 strikeouts over those 11 innings. I mean, there's not a ton of upside here, but he is facing San Diego, who's been probably the worst offense overall since the All-Star break. 4,700 on DraftKings is just really cheap. You don't really need it today is the problem. But, I mean, you could go like Sale and him and then have a pretty nice batting lineup still. I mean, it's an option you can have. But, I mean, at this point, we're getting to like the last guy on the list that I would even consider.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, if you're putting together 20 tournament lineups, you throw him in 1, maybe 2 at the most, just because he's cheap. But even in that sense, you know, there's some guys you like to pay for today, but it's not like we don't have any shortstop that's worth paying for tonight. There's no Troy Tulowitzki or Carlos Correa today. Third base, there's Manny Machado, but really no one else you're paying for. So,
Right.
And even in the outfield, I mean, you got Cruz that you'll pay for, but Harper's a lefty-lefty, Trout's got Sale. So it's not like you have to pay down to be able to fit big bats because, I mean, even when you do that, I mean, you're going to be leaving money on the table more than likely. So, yeah, I'm with you there. I'm really not touching any of these other guys. I don't play anyone against Kansas City, especially bad lefties. Not touching anybody, any Vidal Nuno against Baltimore. I mean, he's a relief pitcher anyway, so even if he does have a good outing, you don't expect he's going to go more than 5 innings at absolute most. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
not even worth my roster spot, to be honest with you.
Yep.
All right, so short and sweet today. That's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.